Hello and welcome. When we talk about the future of India and India becoming a developed country by 2047, there's perhaps no field more important than education. The fact that millions of Indians need to be skilled to a particular level on the basis partly of their education to get them jobs in the future in an economy which is growing very fast is a top priority for the government. But what is the nature of the education that they do need to receive now? We've got a new education policy. It is extremely forward-looking, but it does come with its series of challenges. And are we ensuring that students have a holistic vision and understanding of education? Are we giving our students the opportunities that they actually want? What are the challenges posed by artificial intelligence? Is this an enabler, or is this something that comes in the way of quality education and ultimately comes in the way of jobs? These are just a couple of questions which we hope to cover in this session today with some of India's finest educators, members of the government, and members of the Confederation of Indian Industry. I'd like to thank you all very much for being part of this conversation. I'll introduce our panel. To my left, Dr. Naushad Forbes is co-chairperson of Forbes Marshall, also the chairperson of the CII National Higher Education Council. Dr. S.K. Banwal, Additional Secretary, Department of Higher Education in the Ministry of Education, with us. Professor Pankaj Chandra, Vice-chancellor, Ahmedabad University. Professor Somak Rai Chaudhary, Vice-chancellor, Ashoka University. Professor Rudra Pratap, Vice-chancellor, Plaksha University. Professor Prithvi Datta Chandra Shobi, Dean of the School of Interwoven Arts and Sciences at Kriya University. So it's a wonderful panel that we have over here. Let me come straight across to Professor Roy Chaudhary first. Professor Roy Chaudhary, looking at India's broader education, do you believe that the curriculum that we offer our students is relevant?
I think that's where the National Education Plan comes in. I think the traditional way we have structured the education so far has two drawbacks as we go forward. It's not future ready. If we want to expand the enrollment ratio as well as make the students prepared for the future, we need the education, the tertiary education, to be based on skills. It needs to be based on to learn how to interpret information which is so widely available now, compared to the traditional education system, which is based on transferring education, transferring information from a teacher to a student. Now, the student needs to be enabled to discern what is right and what is wrong, and how to interpret and critically evaluate information. That's the basic skill one needs. And of course, there are other skills like communication, skills like writing, and in certain ways, technical skills, etc. Now, that's one. The other thing is that universities need to be producers of information now. So they need to create information, and that is why research is very important. The Indian education system is very different from the global education system in that universities are not research enabled. At least a large fraction of universities need to do this. And so having the faculty as well as the infrastructure be geared towards creating information and in the long run work hand in hand with the industry is very, very important.
Okay, we'll talk about infrastructure in a while. But Professor Rudra Pratap, are our universities educating children or skilling them enough to get jobs?
Most universities obviously target exactly that they should be skilled enough to get jobs. There is a lot of failure there, I must say. To be able to skill students to get jobs, that's not the only job of a university. There is far more, and you yourself asked a very pertinent question, that are our students today mentally resilient? Who is responsible for that? Where do you do that? That's part of university education too, right? Teaching students how to navigate through uncertainties in the world that in the previous session, Naushad ji pointed out. Where do you learn that? So I think skilling to get a job is just a small part of a good university education. But skilling to be relevant, curious, and always learning throughout your life, that's the job of a university.
Okay. Professor Shobi, let me persist with my question because I somewhat disagree. I think a large number of students are in university not just for the experience of being educated, but it is with a vision of the future where you need a job. Therefore, in as much as an education is valuable, not just for college, but for your entire life, are we doing enough to ensure that our students get jobs?
Vishnu, I think there was a lot of discussion in the previous session about the diversity of Indian institutions. I think both with respect to the curriculum and with respect to the job prospects, if you ask the four of us, we are quite happy with what we are doing. But it's what's happening in the rest of the universities that is the question. And that's where I think a big problem lies, which is with faculty autonomy. One thing that we pride ourselves in the four universities which are represented here is the faculty autonomy, both with respect to how we recruit faculty and how we give autonomy to them to manage their classrooms, assess their students. Because without that, you can't create a world-class university. And just one last point. What is one of the biggest problems that we are facing in Indian university system today is a completely broken down faculty recruitment system, especially in the public institutions. There are universities where in 30 plus years, not a single faculty member has been appointed to a department. There are universities where not even once in 20 years recruitment is taking place. With that kind of a broken down recruitment system, faculty recruitment system, you just can't, have any hope in a university system.
Autonomy and recruitment, 2 points,
Absolutely.
which are my takeaways from what you said. Dr. Bandwal, would you like to first refer to the entire issue of autonomy? Do we have, or are we certain that our institutions are protected enough, our private institutions, to ensure autonomy, to ensure that they have the freedom to say what they want, to educate as they want? Would you like to take that first?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think everyone will appreciate in Indian higher education system, the universities can be created only by three systems. Either central government, the parliament passes the act by which all centrally funded higher education institutions are running. And if you see the act, it provides almost all flexibility as regards their academics goals. Except for their financial support, which they need, most of the things, they are quite autonomous in taking decisions. Similarly, the state government passes the act for the state university, as well as most of the private universities. So most of the private universities which has come up, they are mostly by the state act, and there also there is a almost full autonomy as far as the private university goes, because they don't also depend for any kind of funding. And the third category is the deemed to be university, which comes under the UGC Act. There also, most of them were already running as it is, as a autonomous institutions. And once they are given deemed to be university status, they also impart degrees. So there is a lot of flexibility as regards the academic goals. So I don't see the universities in India has restriction as far as the academics goes inside their campuses. And most of the regulations which UGC had for different regulations to restrict that, or maybe to ensure the quality of the curriculum you deliver. If you see the new national education policy, most of them has been made completely left to the university and made quite flexible. So I think, and the policy of course has much more value over the regulations which we had. And even the UGC subsequently has come out with more and more regulations to implement NEP, National Education Policy, which is gearing more towards the flexibility, multidisciplinary and also to allow them all flexibility in designing their courses, etc. Whatever little regulations are there, actually to ensure that the quality is maintained by all those universities which are for the short term gain or so in this system. Otherwise, it is more or less autonomous. As regards the recruitment goes, and before that, I'll come to the skilling. And you said rightly, the policy also says almost 50% of the skilling courses can be made part of the curriculum, which is extremely important. Now, the skilling is not just a extracurricular or a co-curricular activity, is very much part of the academic activity, and therefore they can be given credit up to the extent of 50%. So the skilling is actually made very important part of our academic curriculum.
Dr. Verma, let me just keep the strike rotating and I'll come back to you in a moment. But I wanted to go across to Professor Pankaj Chandra, in fact. If you look at the new education policy, it focuses a great deal on your mother tongue or regional languages. And I think that's wonderful because I think as a country we benefit greatly from having this multitude of languages. As I understand it, for the first 5 years of schooling, there is a great emphasis on the regional language or your mother tongue, whatever it may be. But when we talk about creating a world-class education system, do we or are we satisfied with the stress being laid on regional languages, or do we want to continue with English as the primary driver of educational change?
I think the challenge is not regional language versus English. The issue is what kind of resources do we put behind the efforts that we make to make sure that the best of knowledge globally is available to our universities, to our students, and to the faculty. And I think this is where...
And that's language agnostic, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because if we decide as a nation to go through the regional languages, I think it's imperative then we build a translation program, we build a mission whereby global knowledge is translated into regional. Books are available, journals are available, databases are available. It's only then that we will be able to actually ride the advantage that you're rightly presenting. It's in absence of that that English suddenly becomes the language where we are able to access global knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very critical that, that we access global knowledge. We access, and not in the top 50 institutions of our country, but in all 1,400 universities and 44,000 colleges. You walk into many of these colleges or universities, there's no library. There's no information. So what the kids have access to is very outdated information, very outdated knowledge, very outdated books. So if that process is established very well, and NEP talks about this. So for NEP to succeed, in my mind, libraries in the most smallest of colleges need to be so well equipped. Databases have to be accessed so very well so that our kids have access to the cutting edge information.
Dr. Barmal, just very briefly, do we have a mission for translation in our country?
I think translation, of course, is going parallelly. But one important thing is all these knowledge creation which has taken place till date has been in a particular language. And therefore, the original language knowledge also has to be created in the original languages. Not just the translation, which still will hold the crux in the original language in which it has been created. So what we exactly need is not just the resource behind it for translation and all the teachers. You see, the teachers, if they teach in English or in only Hindi, I think nobody will learn another regional knowledge in the other regional languages. So, of course, it is a big challenge. But the first of the things is we need to accept that in India, we need to provide education in regional languages. Because we know our lot of knowledge as such exists with the knowledge. Second, we can ensure access only if we provide education in their language. We just don't want 12% English speaking people to provide education to rest all 100% of the students who are themselves not very good in that particular language. So that way, I believe the challenge is big, resources have to be put in, but let us mentally accept it that this is a requirement this country needs, and therefore we have to move forward with all resources, capacity building, teachers, and let us see. In fact, a lot of things will come out once we see the students learning in their language and start realizing their full potential.
Right.
I think that will be the major achievement we can get through.
Dr. Forbes, one-word question, research. Go ahead.
Okay.
Research in Indian institutions. Why are
Sure.
we lacking?
So this is, I think you're asking me that because it's an old hobby horse of mine. So I've long argued that as a country, we spend most of our publicly funded research within autonomous government institutions and not in the higher education system. And if we actually increasingly spend most of our public research funding in the higher education system, both public and private, it will be hugely beneficial to education in the country and hugely also beneficial to research and research outcomes in the country. The percentages are that in India, we spend 0.05% of GDP on publicly funded research done within the higher education system. The world average is 0.4%. So we need to scale that research investment by a factor of 8. And the great benefit is not just the research outcomes, but the great benefit is the quality of the student that ends up coming out from these institutes, because they've been exposed to current research, they've been exposed to faculty who are doing a lot of research, whether in regional languages, national languages, or English. And the importance is that research then leads to current knowledge in the heads of the individual students that come out. And that's what will then transform education, but it'll transform all our companies too.
Sure. Professor Shobi, I wanted to focus a little bit more on something which I brought up a while back, the health of students. We can't just be talking about education if we aren't dealing with the development of children, the stresses they face. We live in a country where unfortunately dozens of students end their lives because they're under all sorts of stresses. When we talk about revising our education, how important is it for us to ensure that student suicides are a thing of the past? How do we do that in such a competitive system?
No, this is one of the most significant challenges that all of us have been facing. When I started grad school, I'd finished 3 degrees before touching a computer. I'd spent 10 years in US finishing my PhD before I started using a cell phone. But in my first job in US, I started dealing with students who had grown up or who had begun using social media. So the last 10, 15 years have been such a transformative period in our, in human history. And as a historian, I'm struck by that, right? So the pressures that these 2 generations have been facing, in the past 2 generations have been facing, and the pressures that the next few generations will face, are the kinds of pressures that we haven't been able to understand even, let alone address it. And there, I think, there was quite a bit of discussion about, both in the previous session, and there were references to unpredictability, right? Again, as a historian, I feel this is the first time in human history in the last 10, 15 years, we have not been able to anticipate what kind of a society that we are going to be looking at, what kinds of opportunities will be available, what kind of prospects people will have, or even the lives that we can have, right? And so in that context, we are facing unprecedented challenges, and we are basically trying to find solutions each day as we grapple with these problems. That's a huge challenge.
Professor Pratap, it's not that the government isn't trying to end this horrible situation with students ending their lives. Councillors are mandated. State governments are warned. Educational institutions are blacklisted. And yet this continues. Why are we falling short? Number one. And number two, the expectations of parents have a great deal to do with the pressures on children, on young minds. How is that equally a factor in this country?
Incredible question. You know, this is something that we all are facing right now, grappling with this, right? World over. This is not Indian phenomenon alone, okay, everywhere. It's extremely important to talk to students, counsel them in the right way, right from the day they arrive on your campus, you know, wherever they are, about looking at the person sitting next to them as not a competitor, but a collaborator. That's how life is. Once you graduate, you are not competing with the guy next to you in your organization, but you are collaborating. That training got to start from day one in the university. And we do that. Understanding that, hey, look, little failures, you know, this has come in the millennials, you know, so much, that they just can't handle failures. They just don't know how to handle any kind of, you know, the slightest of difficulties and the wilt. They're like marshmallows, you know, a little bit of heat and they melt. Why is that? You look at the home environment. You look at the parents. Parents coming today, this didn't happen when you went to college or I went to college. Parents coming today, their first question is, what will be my child's CTC package? For God's sake, don't shortchange your child. Is that the only goal in life? And that kind of pressure, you know, what I call cousin pressure, is what is deciding what majors they should take, what kind of field they should study, and continuously looking at building their internship. You know, day after day, they are doing multiple internships for CVs, so that this is all heading in the wrong direction. We got to arrest this. It is a collective responsibility of everybody sitting here. You, me, you know, Mr. Burnwal, everybody here. What are we doing to our next generation?
No, absolutely.
So we do very finite steps in this direction. Counseling not just on the first day or during the semester or during the year, throughout, and making sure that not a single student thinks that they are on some conveyor belt where nobody is paying attention. Pay attention to every single student. They can't be a roll number, mere roll number. They have to be an individual to the university. That's how you treat this.
Please do clap your hands, because I think that addresses a very, very important issue. Professor Roy Chaudhary, we have, and you're with Ashoka, and we've got Professor Shobi with Kriya. We've got excellent private universities now in our country, and there's a demand for many more, not necessarily Indian, but foreign institutions setting up shop in India. Do you welcome that? Do you believe foreign universities with Indian branches will enhance the overall quality of education in India?
I certainly do welcome them. Of course, our education plan going forward lays quite a lot of emphasis on globalization. The globalization happens in many, many aspects. Globalization happens inside out. We reach out to universities all over the world to help us in our research, in our teaching, student exchange, in building and embellishing their lives, etc. But foreign universities coming on Indian soil would also add a flavor of bringing in their experience in technology, experience and faculty on Indian soil, and helping us, working with us, collaborating with us, and of course competing with us. I think the sense of competition is very good here. But we also heard how, in order to increase our enrollment ratio, we need twice the number of universities in the next 10 years. So I can also see that is going to happen more in the private sector than in the public sector. I can see the private universities replicating models that work, and and setting up more and more campuses all over the country. And if we can work very well with the international universities, both in India and abroad, it is going to help us all. The challenge there is also to make sure that we reach out to the kind of people who will come into these universities in order to increase the enrollment ratio. We have to know that, we heard that only a quarter of our eligible population in that age bracket are universities now. In order to go to the next quarter, we have to reach out to a very different kind of population. That is also, we have to know that the people who are not in universities now are not there, not only because the opportunity is not there, but they come from a very diverse background.
Yes.
From the rural backgrounds, gender equity is a very important issue. Disability is an important issue. And also, there are a lot of people who are eligible, who are not coming into the Indian university system, they're going abroad. In order to diversify our menu, as it were, which is on offer to the coming generations of university students, we'll have to look at how universities all over the world do this in their diversity. We have to work with them and make sure that we create opportunities for the next quarter that we want to come into the university sector. And so I would say more the merrier. And I think we would encourage very close collaboration with the institution.
Look, it's been wonderful speaking to all of you, and we've gone through a fair number of topics, from the health of students to artificial intelligence to new opportunities and language. We've got incredible challenges in front of all of us. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us on this very, very special NDTV broadcast. Thank you very much indeed.